The dust settled slowly in the town square as another day's heat began to fade. Jake Morrison adjusted his worn black hat and counted the coins in his leather pouch. $3 silver and some change. It wasn't much, but it was all he had, left after months of drifting from town to town, taking odd jobs where he could find them. The wooden platform in the center of the square drew his attention. A small crowd had gathered around it, and he could hear the auctioneer's voice carrying on the evening breeze. Jake had seen these auctions before in other frontier towns. Desperate people selling whatever they could to survive another day. Tools, horses, sometimes even personal belongings that held precious memories. He moved closer, curiosity getting the better of him. The auctioneer, a thin man with nervous eyes, was presenting items with little enthusiasm. A rusty plow, a set of cooking pots. Then something changed in the man's voice, became more urgent. And now, gentlemen, we have a most unusual situation, the auctioneer announced. Miss Elena here finds herself in need of employment. She's offering her services as a housekeeper, cook, or whatever honest work might be required. Jake's eyes found her then. A young woman stood on the platform, her chin held high despite the circumstances. She wore a simple brown dress that had seen better days, but there was something about her bearing that spoke of dignity. Her dark hair caught the last rays of sunlight, and her green eyes scanned the crowd with a mixture of defiance and resignation. The bidding started low. A few ranchers called out amounts, discussing her like she was livestock. Jake felt his jaw tighten. He had grown up poor, knew what it was like to have no choices, but this felt wrong. The woman's eyes met his across the crowd, and he saw something there that reminded him of his own sister, lost to fever years ago. Without thinking, Jake stepped forward. $5, he called out. The crowd turned to look at him. He was just another drifter to them, dusty clothes and weather-beaten face marking him as someone of little consequence. But his $5 was more than anyone else had offered. $5 going once, the auctioneer said quickly, eager to close the deal. Going twice, sold to the gentleman in the black hat. Jake walked to the platform, his heart pounding. What had he just done? He handed over most of his remaining money and helped the woman down from the wooden stage. Up close, he could see the weariness in her face, but also a strength that hadn't been broken by whatever circumstances had brought her to this moment. "Thank you," she said quietly as they walked away from the dispersing crowd. Her voice carried an accent he couldn't quite place, refined in a way that didn't match her current situation. "Name's Jake Morrison," he said, tipping his hat. "And I want you to know I'm not looking for anything improper. Just seemed wrong. What was happening back there?" "Elena Vasquez," she replied, studying his face. "You don't look like you have $5 to spare." Jake gave a rueful smile. "I don't, but sometimes a man's got to do what feels right, even when it's not practical." They found rooms at the small boarding house on the edge of town. Jake paid for 2 separate rooms, using the last of his money. Over a simple dinner of beans and cornbread, Elena began to share her story. Her family had owned a ranch outside of town, she explained. When her father died, creditors had come calling. The ranch was sold to pay debts, and she had found herself alone with nowhere to go. The auction had been her last resort, a way to ensure she had food and shelter, even if it meant giving up her freedom. "What will you do now?" she asked Jake. "You spent your money on a stranger's problems." Jake shrugged. "I'll find work. Always have before. What matters is you're safe for now." Over the following days, Jake took on odd jobs around town while Elena helped the boarding house owner with cooking and cleaning in exchange for their continued lodging. They fell into an easy routine, sharing meals and quiet conversations in the evening. Jake noticed things about Elena that didn't quite fit her story. She could read and write better than most people in town. Her knowledge of horses and cattle suggested she had grown up around more than just a small ranch. And sometimes, when she thought no one was looking, she would touch a small locket at her throat with a reverence that spoke of deep significance. It was on their 5th evening together that everything changed. A group of well-dressed men rode into town, asking questions at the saloon and general store. Jake watched from the boarding house window as they showed something to the locals, a piece of paper that made people point in various directions. Elena came to stand beside him at the window when she saw the men. Her face went pale. "They found me," she whispered. "Who are they?" Jake asked, but he was already reaching for his coat. "My father's business partners," Elena said, her voice barely audible. "Jake, there's something I haven't told you. My father, he wasn't just a rancher. He discovered silver on his land. A lot of silver." Jake turned to face her fully. "Go on." "The ranch wasn't sold to pay debts," she continued, words coming faster now. These men killed my father and forged documents to claim his land. I barely escaped that night. I've been running ever since, trying to figure out how to prove what they did. The locket, Jake said, understanding dawning. You've been carrying evidence, Alina nodded, pulling the small gold locket from beneath her dress. My father gave this to me before he died. Inside are copies of the real ownership documents and a letter explaining everything. But I needed somewhere safe to hide, time to plan. The sound of boots on the boarding house steps interrupted them. Jake quickly blew out their lamp and guided Alina to the back of the building. Is there anyone who would believe you? Any law that's not already bought? He asked, as they quietly made their way toward the back door. The territorial judge in Santa Fe, Alina whispered. My father knew him personally. If I can get there, then that's where we're going, Jake said simply, slipped out into the night, making their way to the stable where Jake had noticed 2 good horses earlier. He left what little money he had found doing odd jobs as payment, along with a note promising to return the animals. As they rode out of town under cover of darkness, Alina looked back at Jake with something like wonder. Why are you doing this? She asked. You could have just walked away. Jake was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. My sister used to say that sometimes God puts people in our path not because they need us, but because we need them. Maybe we both needed something to fight for. The desert stretched out before them, vast and uncertain. But as they rode toward the distant lights of Santa Fe, Jake felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Purpose, hope, the weight of doing something that mattered. Alina rode beside him, no longer the desperate woman from the auction platform, but someone reclaiming her strength and her future. And Jake Morrison, the drifter who had spent his last $5 on a stranger's freedom, had found something worth more than money. He had found a reason to stop drifting. Behind them, the town grew smaller in the darkness. Ahead lay challenges and uncertainty, but also the possibility of justice and new beginnings. Together they rode toward dawn to people who had saved each other when they needed it most.